I didn't have the highest offer, but I built a relationship with the owner of the land. That relationship is paying off. That trust is worth more than the higher price somebody else was offering.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
All right, welcome back to the Gentle Art of Crushing It, and this is another group episode. We're going to be doing this a little bit different today. We're going to be focusing on an asset class, and specifically we're going to be focusing on self-storage. So today we have with us both Doug Clark and myself, but most importantly we have Sean Graham, who is actually an operator in the space. So, Sean, I think it might make sense if we can you kind of just kick this off and tell the audience, kind of give us a brief overview of what is self-storage, so we start on a level playing field and make sure everybody knows what it is we're talking about?
Yeah, so self-storage is just, simply put, it's renting sheds, right? It's just like people have extra stuff and they don't have enough room in their house, or maybe they inherited stuff, maybe they're moving and they need a place to store things. So the beauty of self-storage is it's rented on a month-to-month contract, typically, right? So you have a lot of control over the asset class. You have a lot of control over the revenue, the customer, and you can kind of, as opposed to like a long-term lease where you get into with apartment complexes, with self-storage, you can almost manage it like airline companies manage flights, right? And it's all based on supply and demand. So the more demand there is, the prices can go up. The less demand there is, the prices go down. You kind of adjust accordingly. So really the revenue control is the beauty of self-storage, but overall it's a really simple business, and that's really why I love it, and that's the reason I chose it for my commercial real estate future, what I decided to focus on. And yeah, I'm a couple of years into it now and having fun, and we're in interesting times. It's different. The last couple of years with COVID and all the money being pumped into the economy, we just saw so much demand. You could charge whatever you wanted, really. And I say that, it's all, of course, relative, and I don't mean that completely, but you could increase rates 20%, right? And hey, you're still 100% full. And it's not like that anymore. Interest rates have gone up. There's less movement in the housing market. Things have just changed a lot. So demand has really been affected, and I'm seeing that at the facilities. And I think everybody is nationwide. So it's an interesting time. And I think operations right now is more important than ever with self-storage. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Kind of, my vantage point is that I'm invested in, 6 or 7 different asset classes. And when I think about self-storage, I think kind of, like, as you mentioned, easy operations. So you don't have dozens of employees that are managing this asset. You essentially have metal buildings sitting on concrete that will be here, after the apocalypse, essentially, right? There's not a lot to those. But I also hear that cash flow on these can generally be better than multifamily, and depreciation quite often can be a little bit less than what you might see in some of the other types of structures, essentially. So, as a passive investor, I like to invest in the space because of consistent cash flows with, essentially good operators that roll technology into these units to make sure they're running really efficiently. So.
Yep. Totally agree. Yeah. It's, they're great businesses. You just have to be careful about supply and demand. And what I think I'm seeing too is in times like this, I believe, at least based on my experience so far with this, if you'd call it a recession, the lower income areas, they're hit harder, like the interest rates and stuff, the banks being tight with their money. The people in lower income areas, like right below 50,000 median household income, they're getting hit a lot harder. You're seeing a big difference versus the average income is 120,000 a year, right? Those guys aren't seeing as much of the effects. But yeah, it's an interesting time. And you're right. Technology management, that's everything. So it's just important that you really know what you're doing, or have in place the correct third party managers that do know what they're doing, right? Because if you don't, well, now's the time where a lot of those businesses will be exposed.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting too. And I wonder, you mentioned average incomes, and my understanding is in the self-storage space, they use this term of recession resistant in this space,
Sure.
where they're saying, dollars are made in this space when people have major life changes, which tend to happen as the economy is going up or as the economy is going down. So
Right.
people get divorced, get new jobs, move, whatever, during those transitionary periods, and the dollars
Absolutely.
seem to, or at least occupancy seems to be tied to life events, which are occurring pretty regularly. Now, I'm curious though. You mentioned the average income piece. That's probably more a function of the markets that you're choosing than it is the asset class, because those same incomes still apply to apartments or industrial or office or any of those other things. So I'm curious, do you think that it impacts this space more, or impacts this asset class more, or is that just unique to the type of markets?
So I think the higher the income, right, the more you will see customers who are focused on quality, right? And the lower the income, the more you're going to see customers who are focused on price, right? So I like to offer the facility that's gated, has the security cameras, has the automatic gate opener, well lit, that sort of thing, right? You can rent online, has a call center, and that's important to a lot of people. But to some people, it's not. They just want the cheapest unit they can get, and they're gonna, put their lock on it, and that's all. So it kind of just depends. So when you have markets that you're in lower income areas, well, you're going to see more people who are going for that price, right? And so if you're in an area where, hey, you got extra space in public and U-Haul right around the corner, and they can outprice you all day long, that's where they're gonna go. So, one facility we have, the average income's low. It's probably in the 40s, but we're the only facility within 5 miles, and there's some land barriers too, right? So it's not difficult, or it's not easy for them to go to other facilities, or if they do, they have to go way out of their way. So that facility, even though the income's low, it's still 90+% occupied. It's doing very well, and it's kind of shocking to see how that stuff really matters more when you're going through a recession. Money's tight, it's top of mind, even if, for everybody, right? Everybody's thinking about saving and not spending as much, and it's just I think it's working, right? The higher interest rates, and it's working.
Okay.
Slow them down. I had a quick question, Sean, about sort of automating, because I guess the people that I've followed a little bit in the self-storage space, like I guess AJ Osborne and a couple other people, from my understanding, you could pretty much automate these things to where they're completely, hands off, in the sense that you don't really need a property manager on site, or you don't need to be on site 24/7. What are your thoughts there? Is that pretty much how you have yours running, or what do you recommend?
I do. So I am a big fan of like working with businesses that have the property maintenance capabilities. So many people just go out and hire an individual. They say, oh, this guy mows the lawn. He can also do the lock check. He can overlock, unlock units, clean up the facility. I haven't had as much success with that. Some people I do, right? Some it has worked, but I found more success working with either like property management companies that already have maintenance teams, or contractors that are doing similar type of work, right? And it's easy for them to do, because then you are relying on a business as opposed to just relying on an individual. So you might be paying them $10 more an hour, $15 more an hour, whatever it is, but you're going to get more consistency and quality work. But to answer your question, yes, they absolutely can be run remotely. All of my facilities are run remotely, and that's what we do.
And so do you like, are there property management companies that focus solely on self-storage, or do you use like an apartment property manager or office property manager that also will do this kind of stuff? I'm curious.
We hire for some third-party managers, right? Sometimes we do the third-party management, like we keep it in-house and do the management. So the bigger you go, the bigger facility, the more it makes sense to go outsource, go hire a third-party manager. It really starts to make more sense once you are probably above 50,000 rentable square feet, right? When you're smaller, like I have facilities that are 12,000 square feet, right? And those are tough because people, you can still hire a call center, which I do for all of them. But to hire a third-party manager, you're talking probably a couple thousand, maybe a few thousand a month, and it just is too big of an impact on the net operating income to justify it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm wondering, can we kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts too? Because like you're throwing square footage numbers around, and I'm assuming like, I don't know, is the average unit like 100 square feet or 20 square feet or like?
Yeah. Well, so it used to be people just wanted smaller units. They wanted 5x5s, 5x10s, and then we're Americans. We just grow. We just get more stuff. And
we got a lot of junk.
We need bigger spaces, right? And like we have Amazon boxes coming to the house all the time, right? And so does everybody else.
Yeah, I got 4 a day, I think. So yeah.
So the advantage of those smaller units are you get a higher rental rate per square foot, right? So you might be able to rent a 5x5 for $2.50 a square foot, but then you get up to like the 10x20s and you're like, oh, okay, it's like 80 cents a square foot or something. So when I look at a facility, as long as they have like a decent mix from like a high level, I'd look at the 10x10s and say, okay, well, they're renting a 10x10 for $1 or right, $1 a square foot. And it's like, I can kind of take that rental rate, apply it to the total square footage of the facility, and that's going to be approximately their revenue. But it depends on how they're weighted. If they're more larger units, then that rent per square foot is going to be a little bit less, and if they're mostly smaller units, it might be a little bit more. So I would say like 10x10s, 10x15s, and 10x20s are probably the most sought after units at this point. Now you still have demand for the smaller ones, but just not as much.
Okay. And are you buying in like major metros or some of these ancillary markets, the outlying areas? Where are you guys buying?
So we're focused, everywhere. A lot of my focus has been on ground up development recently. So right now I have one facility that we're building 30,000 square feet of climate controlled self-storage, and that's going well. And that's more of I don't know, I'd say like a secondary, tertiary market. But I like to focus, like when it comes to the ground up developments at least, on, I would say, it being within the path of progress of like a suburban area where it's growing and continuing to have new housing developments, that sort of thing, right? But like in a higher income area. So the closer you can get to like a median household income of 100,000 or more, the better. Just because you're going to be able to charge more and get more on a rental rate per square foot. But when it comes to and for existing facilities, we'll look at pretty much everything, right? Because if it's a small facility, like it might not be a deal for me, or might not be something that I want to take on at this point. I'd prefer to to actually focus on larger facilities. I'd say 20 or 30,000 square feet or higher, right? But for the smaller facilities, maybe it's not a deal for me, but it's a deal for somebody else, right? Like, I mean, I started out with facilities that are 12,000 square feet, and they're great. They're great facilities. It's just more difficult to scale, but I can always take those on and then partner with other people or find a buyer who, who wants to take it on and it makes sense for, and I can get a piece out of it that way. Or maybe it's just, hey, pass it your way. This is a good deal for you. So
Sure. Okay. So anything and everything, send it your way, it sounds like.
yeah, I mean, quality matters a lot. I'm not as big on like portable units that are like pieced together, and I want like I think it should have, I don't know, ideally, right, you have the ability to expand to 20 or 30,000 square feet or
Got it.
more, and they're well constructed units. I mean, I'm not like interested in, hey, we have 5,000 square feet and they're portable units and they're, in the parking lot over here next to the gas station. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, that's great, but not my thing.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, it's a weird market, right? And it's kind of, you have so many different like types and sizes of self-storage facilities where it's hard to just say like, oh, rule this out or don't rule this out. And it's better just to like take a look, and there's just so many nuances to it.
Okay, yeah. So it's interesting to me in this space how you hear a lot of folks that will buy units, but they're also looking for facilities that have extra space around them so they can do additional development, which you don't run into that in office or in apartment where they're saying, hey, we're buying a 100 unit, but there's this field and we're going to build 100 more units over here. So I like that it adds that development piece where you can actually get cash flow while you're developing a larger facilities. So have you looked at that as well, or?
Yeah, the one we're building 30,000 square feet right now of climate controlled storage I mentioned, it already has 30,000 square feet of existing self storage. Plus it has parking. So for the investors, they look at it and say, well, that really mitigates the risk. That's a great opportunity. It's 100% full too.
Wow.
It's the only self storage facility within the town, and it's probably 30,000 square feet. So if you look, it's kind of weird. If you look at it from an aerial view, you're like, well, here I see all these self storage facilities on Google Maps. They're all popping up, but it's like, okay, but there's a huge river in between this town and the self storage facility we have and all the other ones. So they have to go drive 15, 20, 25 minutes to go get to those facilities. So some will, but I mean, that creates a big difference. Sometimes you have to, Stephen Ware, he's a partner of mine, he said this, you have to look at drive time. Drive time is, super, super important. But yeah, I think the expansion opportunities often are really good.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I had never thought of that drive time, but I would agree with that like 1,000%. Especially if we're talking 15 minutes. If we're talking 5 minutes, maybe not a big deal, right? But then,
Right.
15 minutes is a bit of a drive. Now, it's my understanding that if you were to develop one from ground up, you're looking at approximately 2 years. So 2 years putting money in, managing the project, nothing coming in, right? And so the fact that you already have this 30,000 square foot, that's 100% full, tied to this, other project that's being built is huge. But is that fairly accurate? About 2 years? What are you looking at, development wise to get this other one up and running?
I would say that's, so for that one, right, it'll take approximately a year to complete the development. Hopefully little bit less, but you never know. It could go a little bit longer. It just depends on a lot of factors that are not always in your control, like the municipalities and the approvals and shipping. Right? It's everything, the supply chain issues that have kind of popped up over the last few years with COVID. And even though it seems like we're through the thick of COVID, there's still some supply chain issues. So I'd say approximately a year, and then you're going to need, depending on the size of the facility, it could take another year to lease up. It could take a few years to lease up. So it really depends. I mean, we look at that one as, hey, this is going to be a 5-year play for, to stabilize and get to the values that we want to get to. And it's also, I mean, I guess also, it's not the best time to go sell things right now because interest rates are high, and so that's affecting cap rates, and people can't afford to pay as much because debt just isn't as cheap as it was a year or two ago. And that might be the new normal and permanent, or it might change, but I don't know. That'll take some time to play out, and we'll see.
And do municipalities like self-storage? I know they're not big fans of mobile home parks, and maybe they aren't for RV stuff, but what's the appetite for self-storage?
I think it used to be like, hey, we don't care, great. And now they're much more particular about it because, you have towns that say, okay, sure, you can do it, but we want this beautiful block facility that's going to look nice and blend in, or we want all this upfront, I don't know, just like the yard or the gardening or whatever you want to call it, and this number of trees. If it's zoned, right? So they can just get very particular about the cosmetic part of it. But it depends on the municipality. I mean, if the municipality is pretty difficult to work with from the get-go, it's kind of, I don't know that it's really always worth the time. I mean, it can be, but sometimes it's better just to move on and just say, hey, let's go work with somebody who wants to work with us. And especially if you have to go through a zoning change, then that can be in the township isn't big on self-storage. Well, you could just be spending a lot of money and wasting a lot of time.
Yeah. I always say like, there's so many places where we can put our money, and if you've got governments and municipalities that are making it hard, like, I'm just not going to fight that battle. I'm going to go somewhere else where they want our dollars, our work. Like, you put blood, sweat, and tears into this thing for years and years and years, and if you're constantly going to be battling with, the township or the city or whatever that is, it's just go somewhere where they're welcoming you with open arms.
Right. 100%.
Yeah, I love that. I wanted to say, we noticed a similar trend over the past few years in short-term rentals, right, where towns are now, blocking short-term rentals, requiring hotel tax, and now even permits, right? And so that eats into your profits. I wonder if, the same thing has been a similar scenario with short-term rentals because of the competition, the amount of money that's rolling into areas, right? So then the nicer areas like Beverly Hills, for example, would be much harder and have much more hoops to jump through. Is that kind of what you're seeing?
Yeah, I think once it's like a short-term rental, I don't know how that works, and that's very interesting to me because I've looked at them and I've wondered, like, okay, like, cool, this works for now, but what about when the town or city comes out with this new like law? If self-storage is zoned and it's entitled, then that's it. It's entitled, right? I don't think you go get entitlement for a short-term rental, and I think that's kind of the biggest difference. So I'm not so worried about, okay, well, we changed our mind and now you're not allowed to be there, unless it just, that's something you definitely have to like check on in due diligence. Like, hey, was this approved and everything? Because I've met somebody who he bought the facility and had all these portable units. It was like half permanent, right, buildings, and then half of them were portable units. And he was running it for like 10 years. He bought it. And then as soon as he bought it, the township's like, nope, those portable units aren't allowed and they have to go, right? And so he just lost like, I don't know how much it was, maybe 5,000 square feet. But if it's $1 a square foot in rent, that could be $5,000 a month. It could be a big impact, especially if the facility is 20,000 square feet or something, right? So yeah, you have to be careful there. You don't want to be in that situation. That'd be terrible.
Yeah, so when you are, analyzing deals, I'd imagine you have a checklist, right? Of like,
Yes.
one, how many facilities are within 5 miles? How many people live within 5 miles? The demographics, right? The average income sort of thing.
Right.
Do you mind, like that lesson you just shared with us right there could save a listener potentially thousands of dollars, if not more, right? Do you have any
Right.
other like tips or tricks, some things that are important to look for when analyzing a deal that you don't mind sharing with us?
Absolutely. So we want the competitors to be about like 90% plus full, right? There's demand for more. I don't want to be within a mile, maybe even 2 miles of a REIT. I don't want to be competing with Public or Extra Space or U-Haul or anybody like that. Because they can they're playing a different game than we are, and they can outprice you at any time. So that can be difficult. If it's a ground up development, I want median household incomes of probably like 80,000 plus. I want about 30,000 people within a 3 mile radius and 50,000 within a 5 mile radius. Some people are more strict about that. Some people say, well, we want 50,000 within 3 miles. What else? I want to see like climate controlled rents of about $1.50 a square foot per month, right? That's about what you can get or more, ideally more. So that means like, okay, I'd look and I'd just say, okay, well, what are climate controlled 10 by 10s renting for? $150 a month. There you go. Okay, so that's about the $1.50. For non-climate controlled, I'd like to see about $1.25 or higher per square foot per month. Vehicles per day, that's huge, right? That's for ground up development. I want to see 15,000 vehicles per day, like passing the facility. The more the better. I've gone down the rabbit hole of like looking at this conversion, thought it was great, everything's perfect, and then after spending all this time going and visiting it, driving hours away to see it, it's like, oh, it's in the flood zone. It's like, so that's something I checked like right away, now to rule it out. Flood zone, look and see if there's any environmental hazards that are like on the state website, that sort of thing. So I think those are the big ones, anyways.
So you mentioned that relationships are starting to be a bigger and bigger piece of the pie or a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? What are building relationships doing for the business?
So I just think, after COVID, everybody's so bunkered down. They're behind their computers, they're behind their phones, and ideally you run a business like that. And that's like, okay, that's great, but I've by recent experiences, it's reminded me that it's still super important to get out in front of people. Like you can't replace those relationships. And so, cold call on facilities, call on land that could be developed, but like get out of the house, go there, go see the people, go meet in person, because it makes a huge difference. I had there's a piece of land that I want to develop and been working on it for months now, right? And I didn't have the highest offer. I didn't have the shortest contract time, but I built a relationship with the seller, the owner of the land, and met him in person and went out there and kept pursuing it. And that relationship is paying off because I've built trust that trust is worth more than the higher price somebody else was offering. And that was just very fascinating to me because it was like, look, like, okay, maybe we'll, negotiate price a little bit, but overall, I'd rather work with you than work with somebody else that I just don't have that trust built with. So I think that's extremely important. And everybody kind of wants your time too, so you have to do due diligence ahead of time and really make sure you're not wasting your time going and looking at something, right? Or at least know that you're speaking the same language with the seller, but then go out and visit the facility. So yeah, and he verbally accepted my offer like this week. I'm super excited about it, right? And that could be a huge project for me. Yeah, and the contract's not signed yet, and it doesn't count till it's closed. But yeah, he's like, look, I want to work with you. Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
Here's the price. I mean, my timeline was like a year, right, for the contract, for everything to close, to raise the money, for due diligence. That's a long time. Mm-hmm. But to him, it's like, well, I'm not in a huge hurry. That's okay, and I want to work with you. And so that's been, I don't know, I think I've underestimated the power of just going out and meeting people and being face to face and building those relationships.
Yeah, I would say that might even be one key way to stand out right now, right? With so many people not doing that. And you see Randy doing that, right? He's out at a lot of conventions, he's out meeting people. And, so obviously you are as well. Sounds like the both of you have had some luck with that, right?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, though, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. We hear that saying over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. But I think it can't be, overstated enough. It's people make decisions based on emotions, and then they find the facts to back up those emotions. And a lot of people think that we make decisions based on facts, and we don't. I know personally, I get excited about something, and then I will find the data to tell you why my emotions are right. And, Sean, meeting face to face with you, like, you built that relationship over time. Not only is he choosing to do business with you, but he's also not having to say no to a guy that he knows, likes, and trusts. So that's real, like, concrete stuff that you can depend on if you put the time and energy in to do it. So, yeah.
Speaking of face to face, Randy, I'm going to be out there in Phoenix in less than 2 months, first weekend of June. So maybe we can swing by and we can do a podcast or something.
There you go. Yeah. That'd be awesome. Very cool.
Get face to face. I love it. And that's a great insight, Randy, where now that he's your friend, essentially, he has to say no to his friend, right? And let me ask you this, because building trust takes time, even if we're creating evidence for that, in our minds, which I 1,000% agree.
Right.
We don't make decisions based off fact, Randy. Right. That is so true. I love that. It takes time. How long would you say that you put into this relationship so far?
Oh man, that's a great question, and you're making me think about it even more. So, I've put in a couple months, right? And my initial offers they weren't even responded to, like, at all. Like, I had to, like, really persevere and, like, get on the phone and say, like, just talk to the guy, right? And just be honest. Because they say, like, they look at it, it's like a year timeline. It's like, they don't even consider it. So I have to give credit to a friend of mine, Fernando Angelucci, and I just did a podcast interview, hasn't come out yet with him. It was a great podcast though. And we were talking about like the abundance mentality, right? And that's just like a core value of mine. And just to like give and understand and know that like there are an unlimited number of deals and an unlimited number of money out there, and the really like the more you give, like you're gonna receive the same thing in return, whether it's from that person or not. It's just, I believe that's how the universe works, right? So I said, I was like, well, you told me once, you said you found a great piece of property and you told them exactly what you're going to do, build self-storage and stuff. And I was like, weren't you afraid that the owner was going to say, oh, that's a great idea, I'll just build self-storage, right? And he's like, well, okay, good luck, go for it if that's what you want to do, right? Because it's not like a simple thing, like, okay, like, I mean, you could do it, right? But it's probably better to at least partner with somebody who has the experience. And he challenged me to take it a step further. He said, not even like, it's like, okay, just be open about it. It's like, why don't you just go in and tell him exactly what you're going to do? So I went in, he said, let's meet in person. So I go there. He's like, all right, it's going to be me, my kids, my CFO. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like I'm a bit nervous now, like, so we go and we sit down, and I said, beforehand, I asked, like, what do you want to talk about? He's like, I want to know, like, how are these offers? One offer I did, like, it was like a joint venture type of offer. And he's like, well, how's it advantage to you? And how is it an advantage to me? And so I took Fernando's advice and I said, like, I just need to show him everything. I just need to be completely open. And I went and I said, like, look, this is the project. This is how much it's going to cost to build. This is what my bank debt will approximately look like. This is how much money I'll need to raise. And said, like, hey, if you joint venture with me, as opposed to me buying it, which we didn't end up going that route, but said, look, like, I won't have to raise nearly as much money. You'll save money. I'll give you a higher value. Like, you'll make money. We can give you depreciation, offset capital gains. And it's going to save me a lot of time, just from like a capital raising perspective. And I pretty much just showed him everything. It showed him the numbers. And I think it built a lot of trust. It was like, look, this guy's honest. Like, here's what I'm doing. And I just had never thought about it until Fernando said it. But that was a big part of, I think, building that relationship, Doug.
Yeah, through that conversation, you probably showed him how solid you are as well, right? That you're an expert here. You will get the deal done, and that kind of speaks volumes. Also, even if your price is coming in lower, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I even said, honestly, I'm like, look, this might not work. We could go down the path, and something happens in due diligence, and it might not work. Like, we might come up with something in engineering where they say, hey, it can't work, or the municipality might not give the special use, right? It's like zone special use. That might be an issue. There's a million things that could happen. I was like, but I believe in the site. Here's why it will work. Here's why I am really excited about it. And I want to move forward with this. But yeah, it's just being transparent. And then it's also this kind of like this podcast here, right? You're just asking me questions about self-storage. Well, it just gives him a chance to ask me questions about self-storage. And I mean, I like talking business and real estate and self-storage. And so it's just a fun thing to talk about. And you know what? I mean, we might, who knows what will happen, right? Like, we could do business together on something else. We could get into he could invest. I have no idea, or maybe he just sells me the land and that's it. But I don't think it really, it won't do any damage. So I think 10 years ago, I would have said, like, oh, I can't show him anything, and I don't want to tell him what I'm going to do. And I'd have that, like, more of that scarcity mindset of keeping everything close to my chest.
Which he's going to pick up on and,
Right.
feel like this guy's practicing deception, right? So that,
Right.
Yep.
didn't serve you either, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's the right thing to do. 1,000%.
Appreciate
And
it.
I feel like authenticity, I think in any realm is always better. And like you said, it's this deal might not work because it might not work for either of you, but he could introduce you to the next 100,000 square foot opportunity because he knows how professional you are, how much value you bring, how good of a partner you could be for his buddy who happens to own whatever it is. So, and I think
Right.
that, we've got a lot of times I think scarcity mindset is driven by fear ultimately. Like
Yes.
so you wouldn't want to share with him like here's my business plan because he might go do it. But the abundant mindset and being authentic, I think if you just put all your cards on the table, people are really attracted to that. And I see that in my business where I'm talking with investors and they say, "Well, gosh, what's the worst thing that can happen?" And I'm like, "Well, the worst thing that can happen is I can run away with all your money. Like literally,
Yeah.
you could wire 100 grand and I leave town. Like that could happen."
Yeah.
But let's talk about the things that are in place that would actually protect everybody from that occurring, right?
And just
And when you
yeah.
go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
No, go on. I was just gonna say, but
That
they
builds
trust you.
trust.
You've built the trust. You've put in the work. You've shown it, and you're able to answer the questions, and you're honest, and that puts them at ease, right? It's all
Exactly.
trust, and you're not going to run away with 100 grand, and they believe that. They know that,
Yep.
right? Because you've put in that work.
Yep. Exactly. So I'm curious. We're at about 40 minutes now, but I'm wondering, taking a look at self storage, where we're at, kind of in this economic cycle. I'm curious. Obviously, you're a big fan of self storage, and you're going all in with self storage. But where do you see this industry going? Where do you see your business going? Like, what's on the horizon for not only self storage but Maven as
Yeah.
well?
From Maven, I think focusing on more ground up developments, doing bigger capital raises, more 506c capital raises, bigger projects overall, and yeah, that's where I see things going. And with self storage, it's just interesting. I had my facilities uh, evaluated the other day. I got a valuation on the facilities, and the valuations weren't as high as I expected, simply because of cap rates, because of interest rates, right? Like it just one facility was like, we'll give you a 7% cap rate. In a year ago, it would have been a 6% cap rate all day long, right? And that makes a big difference. So we'll see. It's interesting. I don't think like the bigger the facilities, the less impact you're gonna have. I think on those, like the less you're gonna be impacted by the changes in interest rates, right? Because if you are building 60,000 square feet and you're building it in a way where extra space or public would want to take it over or buy it from you, well, they're buying it all cash. So it doesn't really matter if interest rates are 8% or if they're 4%. Well, I mean, they can use that to their advantage, I'm sure, right? To like when they're making offers, but they're buying in all cash. So I'm focusing more on building a portfolio of larger facilities. Also, you have more alternatives for financing options, right? Like you can go to like life insurance companies. The smaller facilities, you're not able to do that. It's just not worth their time to finance something really small. So there's going to continue to be opportunities. Like I said before, I think some facilities will be exposed because the demand has decreased, but there's going to be, I believe, right, there's a shortage of houses really throughout the country, and that's where the path of progress really is, and those people need self-storage. This one that I talked about earlier, it's where it is, right? It's in the path of progress. There's developments happening. So, yeah, I think it's just really doubling down and being sure of the demographics of where you are buying, income, that sort of thing, population, demand, supply and demand. Yep.
Awesome. Well, hey, Sean, this has been a huge help for me and our listeners as well. I do have a couple quick questions before we wrap it up.
Sure.
Any advice for someone that's looking to get in this space, maybe purchase their first self-storage facility? And secondly, what is the best way for people to find out more about you, connect with you, Maven self-storage, and yeah.
Yeah. So connect with me, mavenequities.com. That's probably the best. You can email me, Sean@mavenequities.com, or just go and check out the website. If you have a self-storage facility you might want to sell, you can go to mavenstorage.com, or just email me at Sean@mavenstorage. Both go to the same email. But yeah, that's the best way to connect with me. I'm always looking to connect with others and talk storage. But as far as advice, I would say for people looking to get in, study creative finance. Go look at guys like Pace Morby. And Pace Morby is mostly talking about residential homes right now and how to buy and sell residential homes with subject to or just seller financing. But those same tactics can be applied to self-storage. It's kind of like, everybody's been obsessed with the BRRRR strategy, right? Like buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Right, so they go buy a house and they rehab it and refinance it, rent it out and repeat it. Well, it's the same thing with self-storage. You're buying a facility, you're adding value to it, you're refinancing it, you're leasing it back up, right? And then you go repeat it. You do it again. Same exact thing. It applies to commercial as well. So I'd say those creative financing strategies that are being applied to residential properties, they can also be applied to commercial. So build relationships and think creatively. And look, the worst they can say is no. So make offers. But you're going to see more people who are open to creative financing opportunities, especially in this economy. Because look, if I have to go get bank debt at 8% versus bank debt at 4%, but you still want the value it was last year when I could get bank debt at 4%, it's like, okay, well, maybe you be the bank, and then we can work this out. And I think you're going to see a lot more people who are open to those types of opportunities.
That makes so much sense, Sean. And, right along with that, the no that you get after asking the question is better than the no that you get before asking it, right?
Yeah.
So give it a shot because you might get a yes, right? Love it.
Right. The first step in negotiating is to ask.
Well, good stuff, Sean, Douglas. Thank you guys so much. Really good episode. Neat, kind of getting into the mind of the self-storage operator and hearing how really a lot of these same principles apply regardless of the asset class, regardless of the industry and the economic cycle. At the end of the day, if you can jump in and become an expert and add value to any type of operations, you're going to drive value and increase the value of that asset. And ultimately, I think that's what we're all here doing, whether it's real estate or personal relationships. The more value we can bring, I think, Sean, you said it best earlier, the more value is going to come back to us kind of tenfold. So awesome episode today, guys. Thanks for being on the show, and we'll look forward to doing this again.
Hey guys, it's one of your hosts, Sean Graham. We just recorded an episode with Randy and Doug, and we talked about self-storage. So it was a lot of fun. If you enjoyed the episode, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and support us. Every subscribe, every like definitely makes a difference from our end. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach out at Sean@MavenEquities.com or Sean@MavenStorage.com. Those are my websites as well. I'm always open to talking to investors, operators, self-storage owners. I like connecting with everyone and just learning. Anyways, thanks for the support, and I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.